Is up, fellow Gaslanders? How is everybody doing? It's your boy Fo. And today, I got a special guest with me. It's DM Jim from Game Terrian Engineering. What's going on, man?
Hey, Fo, how are you?
I wanted you to tell everybody who you are, which I'm sure many people know who you are already, but just give me a rundown of how you got into gaming and the whole hobby itself.
Okay. My real name is James Floyd Kelly. I go by Jim, but I write for a living, and there's a lot of Jim Kellys out there, so my editors require me to, well, they don't require, they suggest that I use my full name just so people can find me. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
So, I go by DM Jim. I go by James Floyd Kelly. My friends call me Jim. I would prefer anyone out there who meets me to call me Jim. And I've been gaming since middle school, back in the early 80s. I started in sixth grade. I made a request to my parents for a Christmas present. I wanted a game called Dungeon, which was a board game, and they made the mistake and bought Dungeons and Dragons, which was a very good mistake.
Hell yeah, it was, definitely.
So, I started, I tell people Dungeons and Dragons wasn't actually the first RPG I played. It was Metamorphosis Alpha. I played it. It was a science fiction game, and I loved it. But the next time I went back to the gaming club in Pensacola, Florida, they weren't playing Metamorphosis, but they were playing D&D. And since I already owned the box and had not really learned how to play it, I just sat down and started playing, and that is what got me into role-playing games, RPGs. But years before that, when I say years, now granted I was probably like 10 or 11, but a couple years prior to that, my dad had taken me to, I don't even remember what it was. It was sort of a gathering in Pensacola of people. It was sort of like a craft show slash music festival.
Oh, cool.
And it was really fun. And I was, like I said, I was probably about eight years old. And there was this group of men playing this game at this huge table. And it was covered with sand. I remember that. And they were playing with little metal army figures. And, I don't remember if it was Napoleon era or what, but I was totally fascinated with it. It never left me. And so once I got into gaming and I started realizing what war games were, I really have always had this fascination with war games.
Not a lot of people know that, like, playing on a sand table, that's a thing. Not a lot of people know that.
Yeah, I mean, I've read some histories here and there of wargaming, and that's how they did it back in the day. They could take the sand and they could mold it into hills and valleys but yeah, I remember I'm decades later, I can still flash back to that moment of seeing these men, and they were arguing and fighting over rules and stuff. And it just always stuck with me. And so years later, decades later, when I got back into gaming after college, even though I've always liked D&D and other role-playing games, I always had this war game fascination. And so I looked into it. And I'm not a history buff. And so the history games never really appealed to me. But it was the fantasy and the the fictional war games that really appealed to me. And we're a GasLands. We're all GasLands fans here. GasLands is a war game, whether you want to call it that or not. It uses miniatures. It has terrain. It uses miniatures. It is a true war game. I guess some people might call it a skirmish war game, because it's a thinner set of rules and stuff like that. But
yeah.
But ultimately, my history is RPGs and war games, and now I mainly play skirmish war games.
Very cool. So basically, you went from the larger scale war games, maybe like Warhammer or 40K, and now you play more of like skirmish, like maybe things like Shadespire, GasLands, things of that scale.
Well, yeah, it's funny. A lot of people think that I've played Warhammer. I've never played Warhammer.
Okay.
It doesn't. I'm not going to say it doesn't appeal to me. It does appeal to me in that I like science fiction and I like war games. It has always been sort of an out of reach war game for me because of the cost and time involved.
It's a ridiculous price tag. Like Games Workshop, it's kind of crazy because whenever you want to get people into the hobby, if you're playing a Games Workshop game, it's such a hard sale to like try and tell somebody, try out this game. Oh, by the way, the average army costs $500.
Oh, I mean, I have friends that constantly are trying to get me to play Warhammer with them and buy an army. And when you tell somebody you got to go buy an army, they don't really tell you, if you want to play at our level, which I'm making this up, 2,000 points maybe sound legit. I don't know. They'll say, oh, we play at this level. And when you go and research it, you're like, okay, not only is that hundreds and hundreds of dollars in miniatures, that's not counting the time to paint them up because,
painting time. I've done
it's a lot.
Yep.
And the rules aren't exactly for novices or people who are beginning. I know that GW has put out a lot of skirmish games recently, like Shadespire, to try and simplify things to get people understanding it so they can jump off and play Warhammer. But it just hasn't been me.
So what are your games at the moment? Like, what are you playing now?
Well, I do play GasLands. I play a lot of Frostgrave. I play D&D. I have played a few games of Rogue Stars. That's another Osprey Games skirmish war game.
Okay.
Those are the ones I mainly play. Now, I'll do pickup games occasionally with people. A friend of mine occasionally will get me to play Bolt Action, and he'll provide all the the minis. but again, it's a historical game, and for some reason historical war games just have never really scratched my itch.
I'm on that fence too. I think they're very interesting in their own way, but if I'm playing like a game, I want to play fantasy, or I want to play something that is less realistic and more just whimsical and more fantasy. Like I want to jump out of reality. You know what I mean? I don't want to reenact terrible warfare. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Now there is a group. Everybody always says their favorite local gaming store, FLGS. Here in Atlanta, I have more than one FLGS. One of the gaming stores I attend on Saturday mornings, typically every Saturday morning, there's this group that meets and they play historical war games. And occasionally I'll go in there just to watch. I don't play, but I love watching it because these guys, these are also like 15 millimeter. They're much smaller.
They're smaller than.
They're smaller, but these guys, they don't play around. They have smoke and they have when we talk about terrain like with GasLands, we'll do some buildings and some flame and maybe barrels. These guys have every possible terrain you could imagine in these boxes that they carry in every week.
Nice.
And if you need a guy shooting a flamethrower, they've got a little thing that you can stick on the character and it's got flames coming out of it. And I admire them because they're keeping a history, a part of our gaming history,
and a strong
going.
Visual too. Like when you watch those games, it's very powerful visual. It's actually pretty neat seeing it in person. I played a few games. There was one game group in Manhattan, and they were big on history games. I went to go check them out because they had a little place, and I wanted to play 40K. And they had a whole bunch of people playing 40K, but most of their group was historical gaming, and that's when I first seen tables with the sand and the dirt. They actually had this sand table. So they had like 15 tables, all very nice. And then in the back, they had two humongous sand tables. And it was super cool because just like you said, whatever terrain they wanted to work with, they could make valleys and hills, and they could move the dirt, they could move the sand, they could wet it. It was pretty cool. It was very cool. And the cool thing was the basing was just metal sheets on their models, so they kind of just put it in the sand. so the sand kind of went over the base a little bit
Yep.
as they play stuff. It was actually pretty neat. It was really cool.
Yeah, you're pretty lucky if you have access to a game store that has those, because you just don't see those tables anymore. My gaming stores, they won't allow sand, tables of sand in their storefronts.
They're not around anymore. It was cool, but it was pretty neat, and that was the first time I've seen that, and it was very cool.
These guys, I have such fond memories of watching them with their rulers and yardsticks, and they're yelling at one another, and the guy's going, that's 12.7 inches, not 13 inches. And I was sitting there just mouth open looking at all these soldiers and cannons and things. And I had played board games, with my parents and my siblings. I had never seen anything like this before. And so it totally rocked my world. And it's changed it forever. I mean, I'm a gamer for life.
Dungeons and Dragons was my entry game also. I was walking home from school. I was in junior high school also. And I was walking home from school, and my friend had a yard that was kind of in the front of the house. And his older brother was playing Dungeons and Dragons with his friends. And I was looking over the fence, and I asked my friend, I'm like, what are they doing? Because it looked like they were having like a really good time. They were screaming, yelling, rolling dice. And he's like, oh, they're just playing this game, Dungeons and Dragons. And immediately I was like, what is that? And then his brother heard me asking about it. He's like, oh, come over and take a look. And at the time, one of their friends was on vacation. And he's like, if you want, you could use this guy's character because he's on vacation right now with his family. And this way you could run this guy around and get him experience points, this, and that. And ever since that day, I was hooked. I just immediately got hooked into D&D, and that just led into everything else.
Yeah, nothing has changed with D&D since when you and I were kids, because today I see people come in the gaming stores either on Wednesday night Adventurers League where I DM, or on Saturdays and Sundays when I go into another gaming store. You'll still see people showing up going, I don't know what to do, and there's always a DM or a table that says, hey, you've never played? Come on over here. Fortunately, those of us who like to play board games, war games, role-playing games, we tend to be very open to people who want to try their hand at it. And I think if that ever changes, if we start, making people feel unwelcome, our hobby's dead.
Oh, sure. I think everybody just kind of knows that if you want this hobby to keep on going, we need more people, and you want more people playing. And it's always good just to have more people involved in the game. Even if you're not playing D&D, if you're playing GasLands, or if you're playing 40K, Shadespire, whatever you want to play, it's always fun to have new opponents that maybe have their own armies. You're not playing against the same people over and over again. It's nice to get that new fresh blood in the mix. Absolutely.
I've got an 11-year-old who, he's 11 now, but he played his first D&D game last year at age 10, and he loved it. Now, I told him, he played one season of Adventures League, and I told him you needed to take a break because I was going back to the DM chair. And when he played, I decided to take a break from DMing, and I played side by side with him. We played a pair of brothers. I was a wizard, he was a fighter, and we had a great season, and he loved it. But then it was time for me to go back to the DM's table, and I told him, I said, you need to wait a couple more years. Where I can trust you to go sit at a table and not disrupt, because I had to keep him in line here and there. He'd get out of control, and
sure.
So I told him, I said, if you really want to play again, and I think he does. I told him when he turned 12, so he's got one more year. I said, when you turn 12, because our group doesn't really have an age limit, but they do ask that kids try to be around age 12. So I'm like, you know what, that's cool. When he's 12, I'll bring him back.
And 12 is that's a solid age, because when they're younger than that, they might know the rules really well, but there's still that it's a maturity thing. There's a big difference.
Totally. And now he does play games at home with me. He's played a couple games at GasLands, and he likes it. I'll say he likes it. He doesn't love it, not like you and I love it. He likes GasLands, and he's played Frostgrave, and he likes Frostgrave. But he definitely liked D&D enough that he said he wanted to go back and play it again. But I have hopes that I can get him back into GasLands. He hasn't. I tried to get him to make his own car, and he glued a couple things on and then tried his hand at painting. And at that age, I think you get really frustrated if you're not a good painter, or if you. Well, let me rephrase that. I think he paints fine for an 11-year-old, but he's very critical of his own skills. He sees what I create, and then he wonders why he can't do it. And I'm like, that comes with experience and practice. And yeah. So I think, at the young age, he's sort of, GasLands is sort of intimidating to him because he sees the cars I've made, and then he goes, I can't do that. And I'm like, it doesn't matter. It's going to get destroyed anyway, so what does it matter? But I hope he'll open up to GasLands in the next 6 months to a year, because it's really getting popular here in Atlanta.
My little guy loves GasLands. He loves to play it. He's 9.
How old is he?
9.
He's 9. Okay.
My older ones, they like to play too, but my older ones are 15 and 23. So obviously the 23-year-olds, he's busy doing his stuff. And my 15-year-old, he has a girlfriend now. So it's like he likes to play. He likes to go back and forth. And I remember when I was that age, when I was like 15 to 17, I would play games, but I didn't play as much. And then when I got a little bit older than that, I played way more often. Yeah. But my 9-year-old, he doesn't like to color. He doesn't like to draw. He doesn't like to do anything. So like the whole painting, he doesn't like. He doesn't like to do it. Same thing. I tried to get him to paint. But he's just, some people don't like it, and he just doesn't like painting. He doesn't like coloring. He doesn't like doing any of those things. He likes to do plenty of other things, but when it comes to coloring, drawing, art, he just doesn't like it. He finds it, I guess, not fun or interesting. I don't know.
Well, I've seen more GasLands cars unpainted, like just normal Matchbox and Hot Wheels, with some glue and maybe some splattering of brown rust paint or something. So I think anyone who wants to play GasLands, I think the benefit is that those of us who really mod our vehicles and try to get them looking, I think we're still in the minority. I think more people are playing GasLands with just standard Hot Wheels with some weapons glued on or toothpicks or whatever.
And that's fine as long as people
and
are
there's
playing.
Nothing wrong with that.
Yep,
absolutely.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
GasLands, ever since I started playing GasLands, to get people to play GasLands has been the easiest out of any other miniatures game that I've played.
I will agree with that statement. Every time someone sees me playing GasLands who does not play, or they see a group of us playing over in the corner, you get these people sort of winding their way over, and when they look down and they see these cars turned over and on fire and weapons jutting out of their out of the doors and stuff, it immediately gets the question of, what game is this? This is GasLands. Oh, this is awesome. I gotta play this. And I don't know if you saw. I think you did. I've got this. I'm holding it right now. It's what I call my GasLands starter set, and it's a box I painted, and I just threw a bunch of stuff in it. I threw some cars, some weapons, some dice, some templates, and I'm going to be giving it away over on the GasLands page when I hit a certain number of subscribers.
That I have seen it, and that is a great kit. It's a perfect starter kit. Perfect, get yourself going, and that's really cool because if someone does win it, and if they already have GasLands, that's the perfect thing to give to somebody, and just be like, hey, you want to play? Here's actually everything you need. You got a couple of cards, you got a couple of bits, you got the templates, you got dice, you're ready to roll. For those of us who play GasLands, if you really are if you're having a hard time finding competitors or opponents, this is one of the cheapest games to get into. You can get the book on Amazon for $12. Hot Wheels and Matchbox are $1 each. The templates you can photocopy. I mean, most of us have them, but it's so easy to hand somebody and cheap to hand a friend the rule book, some cars, some little weapons that you may have made or 3D printed or whatever, and if you have the money, buy a set of dice and templates and give it to your friend and say, you're ready to play. Exactly. It is definitely, like, if you have a friend who is on the fence and you really want them to play, seriously, with like $25, you could actually just give him everything he needs. And be like, you have no excuse. Let's go. Let's play. I mean, how many times are you hanging out with a friend and you buy him a beer or 2 beers or 3 beers? That's the same price. If you're at a bar
Exactly.
buying your friend drinks, it's the same price. So just, take $25, get that rule book, and just be like, dude, you have no more excuses. Let's play some games.
Well, at Gen Con about 4 weeks ago, we had a GasLands tournament that Osprey sponsored, and we did not assume anything. We made the assumption that anyone who signed up would not know how to play. So what we did was Osprey bought 3 24-pack Hot Wheels packs from Target or somewhere.
Cool.
I 3D printed about 60 or so weapons from Game Terrian. And what else? We brought some super glue. We had a bunch of little super glue packs. And what we did was when the people arrived, I had all of the quick reference sheets printed out, enough for all 18 players. We had the vehicle sheets printed out, and all they had to do was glue a weapon on top of their car. Well, actually, we let them have 2 cars per event, and we explained to them. There were enough people that knew the rules that we were able to, like, in 30 minutes, we got everybody had their car weaponized. They had their Matchbox Hot Wheels ready to go. And we had, I don't know, I would say we had 15 people playing or 16 people playing, and about half of them were true rookies. They'd never played before. And as a matter of fact, the woman that came in second place was a rookie. She'd never played before, and she made it all the way to second place. Through some good dice rolls and just some really wise choices in avoiding combat at certain times.
That's cool. See, that's another thing. GasLands it's like the perfect game to just jump into. Also, like, the learning curve isn't large, and you could get in there and you could win your first race. Like, the craziest stuff happen in this game. It's the most fun when the craziest things happen. It's fantastic.
Oh, right. And if you really want to have fun, do stupid stuff. If you got some new players there, take some hairpin turns when you probably shouldn't. Do some crazy stuff that you would normally not do in a real, serious competition, because part of the game is hilarious. I mean, it's hilarious when you've got 20 cars on the table and they're all burning and rolled, and 1 car is left. Nothing makes a new player smile than when the carnage is just so thorough.
Or you get that 1 car who's left and he's trying to finish it out, and he comes through that intersection where all the mayhem started, and guess what happens? He crashes because there's too much stuff. And you can't stop. You have to always move. So
you're always moving. Yep.
Exactly, and that's funny. That's
And that's exactly how I was telling you, the woman at the second place, she came out of the gate late. She just didn't understand the shifting rules. And so all this carnage was happening in front of her, and she was never quite reaching it. And she just made a couple good rolls where she was able to go around all of it. Nice. I wouldn't say it was, it wasn't, she didn't get into she did get into some combat when she was racing towards the finish line. And she made some lucky rolls and took out the car behind her. But it was fun to watch, and she took home everything. We gave her templates, dice. She got a copy of the rule book from Osprey. What else? I mean, we sent home the top 3 players with rule book, templates, dice, everything. And hopefully, if they already had it, they just passed it on to the next person.
Exactly. Now, have you had a chance to look at Time Extended 2? You know what?
I've read about half of it. I probably should have read all of it in preparation for this interview. I will tell you, Mike is just on a tear with these modification rules. I mean, so far, everything he has released, I am just nodding my head going, I got to try that. I got to try that.
Exactly.
I got to try that.
And without even getting into the rules, like, just when you go over it, you're like, I can't believe these are free. These are expansions that most other game companies would charge maybe $5, $6, $10 for at the very least. And it's just
Yeah.
no. Here you go. Here's some free expansion stuff. Go at it.
Mike's he's smart. He's building his game a little at a time, and this obviously making these new rules takes time, and he's got to play test them and things like that. But he's doing it right in the sense that he's got a game here that those of us who I played Car Wars all through high school. I just loved Car Wars, but there has not really been, in my opinion, a good car vehicle game or vehicle combat game that has hit me the way GasLands has. And I think a lot of people feel that way. I think a lot of people have seen GasLands and gone, this guy nailed it. And, he's not charging for the bonus content. And he's doing the right things by keeping the players from getting stagnant with the basic rulebook.
And you know what? I hope he hears this, which I doubt it, but I hope, with all these expansions, when they all come out, I will gladly fork over another $20 if he just takes everything and compiles it into one nice book.
Oh, my guess is he probably will.
That will be fantastic. I would love that.
Yeah, I got to imagine that when he gets up to maybe issue 5 or 10 or something, there'll be enough content there that it would be a good and a bundled book from print on demand service or RPG or drive through or something like that. But I have heard through the grapevine. I can't remember if Mike told me this or not. I heard that there is going to be an expansion book, and I'm trying to remember if I remember the name of it. Shoot. Mike's not sitting still. GasLands, I believe, is going to have a sequel. I may be getting Osprey may be hating me right now for saying that, but I believe I heard it somewhere from someone, and maybe it was Mike himself. Somewhere I heard that there is a another rule book, kind of like Frostgrave has all of the expansion books.
Yes.
And it makes.
He's not just sitting around not thinking about the game. He's always thinking about it, always looking to improve it, which is great.
Yeah. Well, Osprey told me at one point that they are on the 6th or 7th, and it may be more than this now, but at the time it was on the 6th or 7th reprint of the rules. And for them, they said this is unheard of. We just don't print rule books that quickly. They don't sell out that fast. So this game has struck a chord with a lot of players, and I'm not gonna tear down Car Wars because again I have a history with Car Wars, but Car Wars just announced or Steve Jackson Games just announced that the next version of Car Wars is going to be at HO scale, like the train HO scale, and in my opinion, that's a mistake. They're totally ignoring the Hot Wheels Matchbox, or maybe they're not ignoring it. Maybe they chose specifically to not go that way.
They're doing what? Is it the slightly larger scale, that like medium-sized car, like the 20 millimeter, I guess, 28 millimeter?
My son has an HO train in his room from when he was a kid. He doesn't play with it much anymore, but I took the HO train and I looked at the people and the cars, the vehicles that go at that scale, and I think they're a little smaller. I think the vehicles and the people are a little smaller. And all I know is that it's not the Matchbox / Hot Wheels scale.
I mean, and that's where it's gonna run into that fence. Like GasLands is like using Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars. That scale is just perfect because you could run out to any drugstore and pick up cars for $1.50, $1. I mean, if you go to like Walmart and those larger places, they're like 99 cents. But if you go to like a smaller spot, they're usually like $1.50 or like $1.99. But that's very cheap for a car, And if you buy 3 or 4 of them, you have a team ready to play, and that's what got me into the game. It was so easy to get the stuff needed to play. When I played Car Wars in high school, we played these little 1-inch 2-dimensional chits. They were like a top bird's eye view of your vehicles. I remember those, yeah.
And they moved in like 1/2 inch and 1 inch increments. And the game was very I mean, at the time, we thought it was great, but you could spend an hour and your car might have only moved 6 inches or something like that. It was a very tedious. The rules of combat for Car Wars could get really tedious. When I first read the rule book for GasLands, I immediately said, "This game is going to play so fast." And of course, it used the Matchbox Hot Wheels size. But I just knew I had to play it, and I had a sneaky suspicion that there were going to be a lot of Car Wars fans out there who would discover GasLands and take to it immediately.
So
and
you
I think that's what
discovered GasLands because you played Frostgrave and you were just seeing what Osprey had to offer. Is that how you found out about it?
Well, I have a relationship with Osprey to a point. A while back, I forget how I ran into them, but I first discovered Frostgrave and I started playing it. I loved Frostgrave.
It's a fantastic game, by the way. I play it also. It's great.
Oh, I just love it. And so that made me aware of Osprey. And then what happened was I started buying other Osprey rule books for their other skirmish games, just as not necessarily to play them, because a lot of times you buy a game and nobody plays it. So I have like their Black Ops skirmish war game, and I don't play it. I just love to read the rules because I think it's a cool game. Mm-hmm. And then all of a sudden one day I saw an advertisement somewhere for GasLands, and I read the little one paragraph blurb and I was like, oh, that sounds really cool. So I reached out to one of my contacts at Osprey because I had contacted them about doing some I write for a website called geekdad.com. I do that on the side.
Okay.
And I reached out to them. I was like, hey, I'd like to review some Osprey products other than Frostgrave. What do you got? And so they occasionally will send me new rule books, a month or two before they're released. And so one day I got this rule book in the mail and I opened it up and I was like, oh, this is that game. And I just sat down on the couch and started looking at it. And within 10 minutes of diving into the book, I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I've been waiting for, forever. And again, I like Car Wars, but 2014, like 4 years ago, Steve Jackson released this collector's edition of Ogre. And during that Kickstarter, he announced, "Oh, we're gonna do the same thing for Car Wars." Well, we're here 4 years later, and there's no Car Wars.
Yeah.
So it was just perfect. It was like the perfect storm, Mike released GasLands, Osprey released GasLands at just the right moment, and I do think that the success of GasLands possibly lit a fire under Steve Jackson Games. I don't know if they'd ever admit it, but I do. I think that one of the reasons we're hearing so much now about Car Wars is because GasLands has been making so much noise.
Oh, for sure, definitely. Now that GasLands, and it's crazy because GasLands is at the point where I used to be the only person at the game club, and I was pushing GasLands because I actually found out about GasLands. My son wanted to play a game with his Matchbox cars. And normally I would make up rules just like off the top of my head. I would take my experience as a gamer and just make a little simple rule set for us to play.
Yeah.
And he was like, Dad, can we play a game without Matchbox cars? And I said, let me look up and see if there's something out there. And then I started seeing GasLands, and I'm pretty new to this game, so I've been playing GasLands for I think I've been playing for about 7 months. And when I found it, then I am seeing your videos, James Hall's videos. Then I seen a whole bunch of videos on it. I was like, wow. I was like, I can't believe I missed this game and I haven't jumped on this earlier. Yeah. And then, but now, and even about 6 or 7 months ago, it was still kind of early phase, I guess.
Oh, yeah.
Because now there are people starting to come into the game shop asking people if they know about GasLands and if they want to play, and everybody sends them over to me.
Oh. Well,
so now it's at the point where people are actually coming to the game club and looking for GasLands.
That's how it is here in Atlanta, at least at the game store I go to. The gaming store started getting requests from people, are you guys going to do GasLands? And then all of a sudden the game store was able to sort of link us up. and it's growing. And I've met a number of people who specifically have hunted down the game store because they want to play this Car Wars clone. One of the guys called it that. He's like, I want to play this game. I don't know the name of it, but it's like Car Wars. And I said, you're talking about GasLands. And he's like, I think that's it. And of course, once he walked over to the table and saw these little matchboxes with all these weapons and stuff, he was just like, oh. And I knew we had another player.
And you know what? It's so funny because it's that thing. It just clicks in your brain, especially for a lot of boys and men. You know, it's not saying there's plenty of women who play GasLands and they love cars and they're great with it, but it clicks in your head to your childhood just playing with these Matchbox cars. And then I used to do things like that when I was a kid. I used to take guns from my action figures and like glue them onto my cars.
Wow.
So like I was already doing that like when I was a kid because I thought it was really fun and cool. And once I seen like there's a game now and I could seriously do it with like some kind of like seriousness to it, quote unquote. Yeah. And I just totally got into it. Like I'm a painter. I love the modeling aspect. I probably like the whole hobbying aspect more than playing.
I will sort of go along with that. I really enjoy making the cars. Now I love playing GasLands, but there are times I'll just make a car because I want to make one and I don't necessarily want to play it. I just have this idea for a paint job and a weapon rack, and so I'll do it. And what I do is when I go play, I'll take as many of my cars as I can because inevitably there's somebody there who's never played before, and I can say, well, here, use these cars because a lot of times people that come to play, they want to play, but they don't want to play with a plain old boring Hot Wheels,
No, they want to play with a weaponized car. They want to play with a big boy car.
So for the last few times I've played GasLands, I have purposefully taken a small Ziploc bag that I have. Inside it is a tube of super glue, some of these little 3D printed weapons, and some Sharpie paint pens because they may not be able to paint their car, but they can at least scratch over the symbols that they don't like or write a number on it or something like that. And I do that because a couple times now I've gotten people who want to play GasLands, but they don't have a car. And I'm like, hey, dude, I got something for you. And they smile when you pull out a little plain Hot Wheels. And then you pull out a couple turreted weapons and a couple flamethrowers and some super glue. And you say, hey, which ones do you want? And they're like, I want that one. And I say, well, here, glue it on and let it dry and we'll play. That's one thing I recommend to every GasLands player. Take one or two of your least favorite Hot Wheels cars and take some weapons, some toothpicks, whatever weapons you can, and a little tube of glue, and just take it with you. Always take it with you, and you'll always have the ability to let somebody make a car. Because once you get them making a car, they're hooked.
Definitely, for sure. I mean, once I started making cars, that's all I did. Like, I have so many things on my painting table that got pushed to the back because I just want to convert cars. I just want to just work on cars. Like recently, I just worked on like a biomechanical build where I put like these like alien parts onto the car, like if they were from Mars,
Right.
And that was a blast. And I'm just trying to just constantly want to take my cars and just put a bunch of new stuff. And there's something so addicting about whenever you're at the store, whenever you're at, Walmart or whatever you're shopping, you just always want to pass by that car aisle. You just want to see,
right.
You just want to see if there's that rare car that you can't find, or maybe there's something new that, you don't have yet. And in your mind, you're like, it's $1. It's no big deal. I'll go there and I'll spend $5 and I'll come out with like 5 cars. And I do that too often. I have like this big bag just filled with cars now.
You're preaching to the choir here. I've got a box of Hot Wheels and Matchbox that if I ever painted them all up and weaponized them, I could probably fin 10 or 20 teams. I mean, it's just ridiculous how many cars. And I'm the same way. It doesn't matter how many cars I have. Whenever I find myself at the Target or wherever, I always go, let me swing by and just see what they got. And usually I find 1 or 2 cars that catch my eye. And I'm like, I can do something with that.
My wife looks at me now. She's like, so when are you going to go when are you going to go and look at your cars? I was like, you know what? when you're going to look at handbags or purses or something, I'm gonna mosey on around to the car section. So you can find me there when you're done looking for your handbags or whatever.
Oh yeah. My kids know. My kids know when they're with me. I'm like, hey, let's run over to the toy section. And my oldest will go, you're going to look at Matchbox, aren't you? And I'm like, yeah, you know it. He knows. He does. But, it's funny. It's the things that inspire us. Like last week, actually maybe a week and a half ago, I was flipping channels and I caught the tail end of Maximum Overdrive. And immediately, ooh, I was like, why have I not got a Maximum Overdrive vehicle? And so I went and, it was that iconic Green Goblin face. And so I went on Thingiverse and I searched for Green Goblin and I think I searched for Maximum Overdrive. And I found someone had created the Green Goblin's face and I had to shrink it down because it was big. It was like about the size of your fist or maybe a little bigger. And so I had to shrink it down to Matchbox size without losing any of the details. And I glued that sucker on one of my monster cars, and I just, now I have a Maximum Overdrive inspired vehicle.
That's fantastic. Actually, I was thinking about that, and I was like, nobody's doing Maximum Overdrive. Seriously, I was like, I haven't seen that yet. And that's funny.
Well,
you actually brought that up because I was actually thinking about that the other day. I was like, I can't believe I haven't seen a Maximum Overdrive truck yet.
If there has been one, I haven't seen it. So I'm not claiming to be the first, but my latest episode, episode 78, it has I call it Maximum Crushed because it's a monster vehicle, and it's painted this midnight blue black, and but it has the goblin face. Anyone who sees it is going to know what I'm referencing.
That actually makes a really good segue now that we're actually talking about this, because there's a lot of people in the GasLands community and stuff like that, and ever since I've been playing GasLands, now I haven't thought about it until I started playing this game, and that's 3D printing. Now, I know you do a lot of 3D printing. And did you do this before GasLands, or did you do this because you play games and you just wanted something to make parts?
I was just I got lucky in that I had a 3D printer. I was experienced with using it. I also am experienced using CAD or computer aided design, which is the modeling software.
In high school a little bit.
Yeah. So, I use a product called Tinkercad, which is a free online CAD, and I do a lot of custom designs that are, one-offs, but then I also frequently go out to sites like Thingiverse.com and I download and modify objects that people have already created. Like, for instance, I found this one guy made this 8 missile launcher, 8 missiles, but it was a single launcher on a turret, and I liked the look of it. But I thought it would look cool if you split it into two halves, each that shoot 4 missiles. And so I was able to import that into Tinkercad and then modify it to split them apart. And I glued that onto my first monster truck. And, CAD, I lucked out. I had a 3D printer, and I realized that a 3D printer is still out of the price range of a lot of hobbyists. But it comes down constantly, and I think the day is coming when gamers, you'll just go out and 3D print what you need to play your game.
Well, by what I've been noticing, you can actually get a decent 3D printer now for like $299. For like
actually, $200.
So even
$200, yeah.
There you go. You can even get one for even less. So for $200. And if you just think about the cost for 1 second, because I don't have a 3D printer right now, so I have to get my parts from people who have 3D printers and they sell parts. And if you do the math, like I'm spending, like I probably bought already for GasLands about $150 worth of bits. So for another $50, I could have a printer myself and just print them myself.
Well, the one thing you got to keep in mind for anyone listening out there that's thinking about getting a 3D printer, the one thing you got to constantly remind yourself is 3D printers they are not like toasters. And let me explain that. With toasters, you go to the store, you buy a toaster, you plug it in, and you put 2 pieces of bread in it, you push the button down, pop, it works, right? 3D printers, they do work, but they can require a lot of finagling, and they're finicky. And so I tell people, it's a rabbit hole. You buy a 3D printer, you need to understand that you are jumping into a very deep pool where you're going to need to learn to maintain that printer, fix it. It doesn't matter how much money you spend on a 3D printer. You can buy the top of the line 3D printer. It is still going to occasionally break down or start doing something weird. And you're going to have to be confident enough in your tech skills to go out to tech support or online and find the solution that you need. Yeah. So I'm always a little wary when people go, oh, it's only $200. I'm going to buy one. And I'm like, okay, look, it's a great price. Like, for instance, right now, the $200 printer is called the Ender 3. It's making such waves right now in the hobby community because it is a good 3D printer. But I have one.
Now, is it a plug-and-play printer? As in, I noticed that a lot of these printers either come where you could open up the box, put it on your desk, plug it in, and just print something. It might not be the best quality that you want at that moment, but you could make it work. Then I also seen you buy some, and they come in like 15 different parts, and you got to build them.
Now, the first printer, not the first, the printer I use right now is called a Prusa, and when I bought it 2 years ago, it came in parts. I mean, it took me 2 full days to build, and I wasn't building it 8 hours straight, but it took a long time because it came completely 100% disassembled. It was
that
not
can be scary for a lot of people.
Absolutely. The Ender 3 is I think it comes in a total, somebody told me, I think it's, because I built one, I want to say it's like maybe 15 parts. It's pre-assembled at the factory. All of the complicated things
all the
are
small
pre-assembled.
bits are assembled. You just got to put the big things together.
Right. And so, one of the things it said it could be built in under an hour. So I put that to the test. And now, granted, I know what I'm doing. But, yeah, I mean, you can put the Ender 3 together in under an hour. But can you get it to print perfectly? I would say no. You're going to have to watch some videos, and you're going to have to learn how to tune it because it needs to be tuned. Every 3D printer is slightly different. They're not exactly the same from the factory floor. And so the Ender 3 is about as perfect a printer for the price as you can get. $200 is an outstanding price, but do realize that the odds of you assembling it and then turning it on and printing the test, they have I think it's a dog that is preloaded on the machine, and so when you start it up for the first time, you can immediately print something. And when I first did the test print, it looked like it looked okay, but not great. I had to spend some hours tinkering with it.
Well, I've been looking up. There is a bunch of videos out there, and I found one video where the guy actually takes you through like the correct settings to get your so you could print like Games Workshop quality models, not maybe as sharp.
Are you talking about Daniel Herrero from the 3D Printing Guild or whatever?
Yes.
Maybe. Let me tell you something. Daniel is the man. That guy, he will get you novices at 3D printing. He'll get you up and running. I mean, he really has a great little channel over, not little, it's like over 10,000 or 11,000 members now. And he will show you in his videos, how to get it printing miniatures. And Daniel has really been I've said it before to him and to others, is that the crafting and gaming community is moving towards this do-it-yourself, print-it-yourself kind of world. And Daniel sort of struck while the iron was hot. He's in there and he's showing people, how you can do it and the results you'll get. And he's just a nice guy. He'll answer questions, and he really bends over to help people.
Well, kudos to him because, figuring all that out, I'm sure there was plenty of just trial and error and just jacked up models all over the place and
Oh, sure.
having to buy a bunch of plastic and just to just try and get it right. So that's really
Oh,
cool
yeah.
that, there's people out there that will bring you through it step by step. And that's what I love about our hobby. It's, our hobby is so great for that. Like people are just hands down, they will explain everything that you need to know about whatever it is you want to know, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, YouTube and just the internet in general have really made it easy. Like for instance, I got into this crafting hobby because I caught DM Scotty making all this crazy, dungeons crafts, and I started making my own, and I enjoyed it. It was fun, and the internet. If you want to learn how to do something, somebody on the internet is going to show you how.
By the way, that display base you made with the Dungeons and Dragons original artwork
Yeah.
statue is fantastic. I'm totally gonna use that idea and make that case.
That's a combination of using, I've had people say, look, I don't have a 3D printer. I don't want you to be doing crafts that require a 3D printer. And I get that. Not everybody has it, but I try not to do 100% 3D printing. I try to do mixes. With that particular project, I used foam. I did some 3D printing. There was painting. I think 3D printing, it's not going away. So I think if anything, you're going to find more and more people using it as a tool. It's just another tool like a glue gun or a pair of scissors. You have a 3D printer.
I'll call it right now. Within the next 5 years, a company's going to come out with a plug-and-play printer that just prints quality models for like $200 or $300. It's just a matter of time for it's going to be like a large name company.
Sure.
So it's going to be someone who's just out there, has a ton of money to spend, and that could make a product just to get people buying it. And I think within the next 5 years, there's going to be a printer that you could just plug it in, out of the box, plug it in, and it'll just work.
I would tend to agree with you. I think the way prices are dropping and also just the reliability of the components and the accuracy. Now, 5 years ago, maybe 6 years ago, my very first 3D printer, it was horrible, but it was all I had, and it wasn't accurate. The print quality was terrible. It was slow. But these days, with the way prices are going and the manufacturing, the quality of the manufacturing is so good that when you do put one together like the Ender 3, you're gonna get it to work. It just may not be 100% perfect. It might be 90% perfect or 95%. And you're right.
What a company like Ender 3 should do is they should come out with a really high quality 3D printer, like I said, and then make their own website where creators could make up plans and then sell them for like $1 or $3 or whatever, and then they get a little cut of that, and then they could sell these printers for cheap. So you just get people buying the printers, but what they really want to make the money on is people going to their website and getting all the plans that other people are making, and they get a little cut, and the people who make the plans, they get their cut too. And I think that's where we're going to go with this.
Well, and it's possible. I mean, right now, as you can see, there's a lot of small companies right now that are selling 3D printed GasLands, or they're selling 3D models for your GasLands vehicles. You can buy the files, and if you have a 3D printer, you can
just print
them.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah, and you can still go to free websites like Thingiverse, and you can find free weapons and things like that on there.
There's people making it all the time.
But the difference is the people that are selling it, like Game Terrian, for example, they're making good stuff, and people are willing to pay for good quality files. And so I bought the first few packs of Halen's weaponry and started 3D printing them, and I was like, I got to buy more of these because they're good. It's
way worth it. I mean, if you not everyone has that skill to like jump on CAD and like really make a detailed piece. It's
absolutely,
it's a really hard skill to learn. It's not an easy skill.
Nope.
And when you make these pieces, you have to keep in mind like people are going to be making them larger, smaller, so you want them to scale right too.
Yep. Yeah, I think you're right. I think I think that there's going to be a company or a couple companies that will probably put their neck out in the next few years and offer a toaster. You know what I'm saying? You go to the store,
Exactly.
you buy it, you come home, you plug it in, and it just works. And that is that's the holy grail right now with 3D printing, because it's not, in my opinion, it's not there yet. There are some expensive, like thousands and thousands of dollars 3D printers that you can buy, and they're pretty much tuned at the factory, and they'll come to your house and set it up for you and all. But who wants to pay that? I mean, the hobbyists don't want to.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Schools will do it. So there's a lot of universities and elementary and high school and middle schools that will pay for that level of expertise.
Now, I've heard that some libraries are actually starting to install 3D printers.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's. I wouldn't say starting. I live in a little small town outside of Atlanta, and our public library has, I think, 3. Now,
wow, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah, and all they do, they have a flat fee. They charge, like for instance, you upload your file to this. They have this this app. You give them the file, and they somehow upload it, and it tells them basically how much filament is going to be used, and they just charge by the ounce, or I guess by the yard or meter or whatever. I'm not sure how it may be weight. Yeah. And you just go in, and they will, if you don't know how to use a 3D printer, they'll show you how to get started on it. And it's sort of like Kinko's. You just go in, and instead of sitting down at a computer and using it for email or whatever, you go into the library and you use their 3D printers. And it's a smart move by libraries to do that.
I mean, they have to do something, because, books are slowly becoming a thing of the past, unfortunately. But, I'm a big fan of, I like having a book in my hand when I read a book. Ebooks aren't really my thing, but I do appreciate them, because I do think we have to stop, hacking down all the trees to make paper when we have technology now that we don't need to do that.
Well, the kids, I think this next generation of kids who's raised on iPads and iPhones, that my son, he reads some of his school books on my wife's iPad.
Sure thing.
And, I think that's the future, because they can store all of their textbooks and things in one place. And my son has a book bag. I lift the thing, and it's 50 pounds of books in there. And I think, why are these kids not carrying an iPad with their textbooks?
I've said this in the past. I'm like, public schools, if they just make a contract with, say, someone like Amazon, if Amazon could afford to sell a tablet for $50, right? You could buy the Amazon Fire, whatever it's called. It's like $50. So you're going to tell me if they didn't get a citywide contract, they can't get a $10 tablet into all these kids' hands? Of course they can.
Yeah, and it's probably coming. I mean, I maybe we're just a year or two ahead, but I do believe there are schools out there that are already well on their way to a digital. I know that there's a school here in Atlanta that I believe all the freshmen in high school have to have an iPad, because they have so many of their books in that format. But I get whenever I buy a rule book like a GasLands or a Frostgrave, I typically spend the extra money and buy the PDF as well.
I like because having it on my phone. I like it.
I do. I love having the rules easily accessible on my iPad when I'm at a game store, and the searchability. When you need a quick find. It's not like the GasLands rule book is thousands of pages, but there is something about on my iPad being able to type in skid or something, and it immediately takes me to whatever rule I'm looking for.
Right. Well, man, it was nice talking to you. It was nice catching up on a bunch of game talk. And we're going to close out the video here. So I want to thank everybody for listening. I want to thank you, Jim, for coming on and just talking games with me. It was a blast.
I'll do this anytime.
All right, man. Have a good one.
You too.